Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's live chat here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you're watching from today. We are so excited to have you here. My name's Todd Neslony. I'm the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association, the biggest mouthful in the world, also known as TEPSA. And today I am getting to partner with an organization I absolutely love called Advancement Courses. And my special guest to talk about today's topic today is Brad Clark. Brad, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Clark. I'm Senior Director here at Advancement Courses since January of 22. And so relatively new to Advancement Courses, but excited to find ways to design professional development that helps drive impact. I know learning's getting harder right now, therefore teaching's getting harder right now, therefore supporting teachers and students and families is getting harder right now. So we've got a great team and we're trying to figure out how to best support that.
Well, tonight's conversation is all about growth, whether that's leadership growth, teacher growth, campus growth. It's just about growth in general. And so I kind of want to start from the leader perspective, as that's one that I have the most recent experience with. And so why do you feel like it's important for leaders to be growing themselves, especially with all the other things they have on their plate?
Sure. Yeah. I think if we center what the student needs, right, and then we understand what those educators that directly support the student needs, and then we understand what those educators need in order to support those students, like a ripple effect. Mm-hmm. These are really uncertain times. They've been uncertain for a couple years now. There's still a lot of uncertainty. And so staying fresh with your skill sets, leaders are getting tons of experience right now, right? They don't need to go out and find challenging environments to stretch their skill sets. And so in that context, I think preserving your sort of mental wellness and health, mm-hmm. and still keeping hope and trust and belonging centered in your own personal and professional life while developing new skills and really understanding what students need and what those educators and families need that you support. That's hard work. It never ends. There's no finish line, but really, really important to make the space to stop and reflect on all that.
Well, you said something important, I think, in there, too, when you talked about how it's important that when we're looking at growth and everything that we take on, that we're taking care of our mental health as well. And Advancement Courses just recently, too, in the past couple of years, has added some mental health courses as well, too, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Social emotional learning courses are our largest sort of portfolio of our catalog that tend to have the most resonance with educators. We've also just recently stood up an educator wellness toolkit, which we're about ready to launch, which curates all kinds of great, high quality, validated links to resources, tools, strategies, key reading. And we've organized that. We're about ready to launch that actually in Utah at a conference at Show Up Utah, which is all about educator wellness. And so once we get that off the ground and we wrap a little bit of support around that, we'll release that to the public and make that available to everybody too.
That is awesome. Well, okay, so going back to growth, since that's the topic of tonight, we talked a little bit about why it's important for leadership, but obviously as a leader, I want to grow my team, whether that's the team in the office, the team at the campus, because when we're all growing and getting better, obviously that's going to impact our students down the line as well. So how can we grow our teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are probably some procedural skill sets that everybody needs, right? Like being able to challenge one and support someone's opinion and being willing to change your mind based on other people's experiences. And, there are some problem solving and collaboration and teamwork skills that we could identify. But apart from that, I think that there are some really important steps that we can take to understand like what growth looks like, what it means, get really articulate around what growth needs to look like for team members. And that there might be some skill sets that everybody needs, but it's probably a highly customized, personalized experience, right? And it's an ongoing dialogue with those team members around what we're working towards, what skill sets we need in order to work towards those outcomes, and how we can learn together, because learning is a social construct.
Right. Well, you said a couple things there that really resonated with me. One of them was you talked about how when we're learning and growing a team, we have to make some of that learning really personalized and customized. And I think as school leaders, and I'll speak for myself too in this, I think sometimes we're so used to getting everybody to be at this training and everybody's on the same page with this, that everything is always so big picture that we miss people's growth along the way who needs something more individualized that we weren't even aware of because we're just trying to get the big picture stuff done. But in sharing that, you also hit on the nose with something where you said everybody needs to understand where we're headed and what the word growth means. Because I think we take advantage or we take for granted what people know or how they define certain words. We all think we know the definition of until you talk about it. And then you realize, oh, we're all on a different page here with what this word means, which is why I love you said learning is a social thing. We have to talk about it and do it together.
Yeah. Well, just one quick thing before we move on. I was like, as a student, I was the bad kid in the back of the class, right? If it wasn't engaging, I was checking out. And then as a teacher, that behavior just carried on through, right? If it was not something that developed my skill sets or helped me do my job better on Monday morning, I was probably not going to be super engaged in that. And so I think we have to solve for that, because everybody needs different things and everybody's going to enter into their learning in different ways. Yeah. And adult learning theory tells us that it has to be meaningful. People have experiences that they have to be able to relate to. The learning that's happening, value implementing, tomorrow morning with their kids. They're trying to solve real problems on the ground immediately, right? But on the shared vision piece, I mean, creating a common language is so important. I mean, whenever I was in the classroom for about 10 years, and I kept hearing teach critical thinking. Well, what is critical thinking? I don't know, but teach it, right? And so, what's clarity? It's accuracy, it's precision, it's relevance. There are research-based definitions of what critical thinking is. And so getting real clear on those terms with students, you know what happened? They became more clear in their thinking and speaking and writing, and they became more precise, and they started to focus on significant information. And I mean, it's the same. There's a parallel here, right? So like the more clear and articulate we can be around what we're working towards, why we're working towards it, how we might do that together. I think that can guide some of those conversations. It's just hard to make time and space to do that.
Yeah, it is.
Whenever you're in survival mode, right?
Well, and you're exactly right. And, you said something there too about the kind of student you were and how that transferred over into the kind of learner you were as an adult in staff meetings. And I think that is also something school leaders have to keep in the back of their mind is those trainings, those PD, those meetings, you're dealing with essentially a class of students with all kinds of learning styles, all kinds of behavior concerns. And just because they're in big bodies doesn't mean they know how to regulate themselves or pay attention or ask the right questions. And so you really have to use your skill set from being a teacher, even as a campus leader, when working with adults.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I mean, just simple things like meetings. Meetings should have outcomes. We should look at them at the beginning and end of the meetings, right? Like, here's what we're intending to do. We might go in a different direction. Let's see how we did at the end. Like, are we holding ourselves accountable to these skills that we're developing, or this understanding we're trying to develop, or a common definition or term that we're trying to make sense of, data that we're looking at, whatever it is that you're, discussing with your teams. I think that the more clear you can be around why the learning is important and what growth looks like, what we're learning, what insights are you learning from your learning process, that sort of metacognitive thinking, thinking about the thinking. That kind of dialogue and professional discourse is just invaluable if you can do it with people that are also on that.
Yeah. Well, and having the follow up as well is equally as important. And so, I think when I'm listening to this and I'm thinking about planning my year and getting everything ready for my team, it can begin to give me a little bit of anxiety going with, I don't even know where to start. Like, where do I even begin with all of this? Because not only does it sound great, and I totally get it, but it's like, but I want to cover this and this and this and this, and then I want to tailor it, and then I want to get us all on the same page, and then I don't know really what I want to start with first. And so, what do you recommend? Where do we even begin?
Yeah, working on complex problems is very complicated, right? And so I think a couple of things that I am forgiving with myself around whenever I'm designing professional development. And I know now I'm on a team that designs professional development for 15 to 20,000 teachers a year, right? So a little bit different than building it myself, but spent a lot of time building professional development once I left the classroom back in 2015. And so, I think in that process, the nearer term we are, like the closer to now we are, I can probably map out what those first steps are going to look like. Do basic experience and interactions and diagnostic thinking, right, of some sort. Now, the further out that curriculum gets or that program or that year gets, the more flexibility I give myself to adapt what we need in real time. So I think by the winter break, we're going to need these things. But you know what? We might get to those in October or November. We might need to push some of those items out to February and March. And I need to be forgiving and flexible and responsive in real time to what the educators need and the dialogue that emerges from learning together. And so, I think that it's always good to develop new skills. Mm-hmm. I mean, you heard me say skills at least 12 times. Right? It's always good to acknowledge we might not have the best practice, but like, what's the emergent practice? Because, a lot of your empirical data prior to COVID may not be completely relevant anymore around what the best practice is, right? And so, I think acknowledging, why is this practice working? Why is it not working? What could we do different? And like that sort of iterative dialogue and creating the space to make sense of what we're trying to implement and what we're learning from implementation, that matters no matter professional development outcome is, right? Or what the team meeting outcome is. It's always important to have those times in there with big open-ended questions that don't have clear answers and to make sense of that with colleagues. So that's super powerful, right? And if an educator's like, oh, you know what? I have kind of figured something out here and I don't know what that looks like. Then I think the leader's like, all right, well, let's go see what that looks like, right? Like, let's go to that classroom, see what it looks like, make sense of that together. And then other educators might be like, you know what, I could try that. I might not be able to do that whole thing that they've done for a year, but I could take a step in that direction. And then how do I build momentum around what that learning looks like? And how do I accelerate that? And, I think that just requires a lot of eyes wide open, diagnostic, like, hey, what's really happening? What do I think's happening? What's causing? Why is that happening? Why is that happening? Why is that happening? That 5 whys protocol kind of approach can really be helpful. Simple, super simple, but really helpful.
Well, you said 2 things that stuck with me in that little answer. And the first one was the forgiving and flexible. And I think that I look at my own path and I'm like, I can see where I was flexible, but I wasn't always forgiving of myself. And I think that, in this high-paced, high-tension environment, sometimes we aren't very forgiving. And so I think being able to be forgiving and flexible is hugely important. But like you said, too, even those educators who are just showing a little bit of growth, finding out how you can expand upon that and celebrate it too, because that little bit of growth may be more than they've had in 5 years. So it's something worth celebrating as well. And so go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I use a lot of $25 and $12 words, but at the end of the day, it's about intentionality, right? You can be flexible and intentional.
Yes.
You can create self-reflection for yourself and others. And sometimes that if you don't really know exactly what to do next, sometimes just admitting, hey, I'm not really sure exactly what we need next, but
Yeah.
I know that we're going to self-reflect on what we're doing. I know we're going to ask big questions. I know we're going to learn with each other and build on each other's thinking. But, that intentionality around building that into whatever that program, for lack of a better term, might be, is invaluable. And it creates all kinds of untold riches that you couldn't have anticipated because you're flexible and intentional at the same time.
Right. Couldn't agree more. Well, Brad, obviously, with this being sponsored by Advancement Courses and you being from Advancement Courses, we cannot have this conversation without talking about how Advancement Courses can support this. And I'll give everybody a heads up in the background. I am obsessed with Advancement Courses. I have been doing work with y'all for a few years now, but I have taken multiple courses and learned so much. And I wish that I had known about some of these resources as a school leader, specifically for the ability that Advancement Courses has to tailor exactly what my needs are to my people. And to see the work y'all put in over the last couple of years to really diversify the offerings you have and how big some courses are, but how bite-sized some other ones are. And so it really makes me choose based upon the bandwidth that I have right now. So I'll stop blabbing on about how much I love it and the reason why I really wanted to have this conversation today. But you being behind the scenes, how do you see Advancement Courses being a support or a help in helping teams grow?
Sure. So, I think ever since COVID, every year there are certain topics that we have across our catalog. We have, 34 different topical areas or subjects and, over 225 courses. So we actually have, and I know this is like this, we have too many courses, honestly. And we have too many options, which is great in order for folks to personalize their learning. What we're seeing every year is a little bit different on the topics that really matter, but we've seen a trend that social emotional learning very, very high up on people's, purchasing behaviors. They're buying multiple courses. They're trying to support their own professional growth in order to support the growth of their students. And I think that's really powerful. Special education also, language and literacy, no shock there, right? In light of all the challenges that we've had around supporting literacy and numeracy development, even numeracy in the COVID environment. Educator wellness, physical education and health, curriculum strategies. A year ago, 2 years ago, really high focus on equity, really high focus on teaching in a hybrid classroom. We still have all those things, right?
Yeah.
And so, one thing that I think is really powerful about a big catalog is if I'm a district leader or a school leader, I can take the district improvement plan, narrow those choices down. I can take the school improvement plan, narrow those choices down. I can look at an educator's professional growth plan. All of our courses are aligned to the Danielson framework, not relevant in every state, but a pretty good benchmark for a lot of states to use. So I can narrow down to a very discrete list of courses and still allow educators to have agency in choosing the topics, content, skills that they want to develop. And I think that's really powerful, right? Yeah. We don't want to remove agency from this process, but we can help educators not only develop new skills, get access to really high quality content, but they can do it self-paced. They can get facilitator feedback from real live humans that are also practicing educators that have the qualifications to be a subject matter expert. And they can earn grad credits, or they could earn continuing education units or credits, depending on what their needs are. And so they can help themselves with career advancement. They can help themselves with skills advancement. They can do all those things at the same time. And that can be aligned to school and district priorities. You could even group educators in a course together, and they could take the same course and still pull out the insights that are unique and individualized and personalized to them, which I think is really cool.
Well, as I have actually spent so much time learning about the opportunities that Advancement Courses offers, to me, it makes total sense for a district who's looking to lead everybody in a general same direction, but also, like you said, give them agency on selecting their own learning that you've just tailored down for them. Because I know for me, if you assign me everything that I have to do, I don't really care. I'm just doing to check a box. But if you tell me I have to do some stuff, but you give me some choice, I'm like, okay, I might care about this. Because one of the courses that I took was all about student regulation and helping students in difficult situations when they're in the classroom. I learned so much, and I always felt like my classroom management was really good. But in that, I was like, okay, I'm actually understanding where some of this comes from. But you also mentioned something else that I love about this is that when I'm in these courses, I'm taking it with other people. So I have that opportunity to connect with others, not always from my district. I have that facilitator there that's a real person. It's not just like I'm just reading these pages. It's interactive. There's so many different ways to learn through advancement courses, which is why I really appreciate what they have to offer. And so because I love them so much, I'm throwing it in the chat box as well. But I want everybody to know that you can use my code. I've got a special code. It's Todd20, and you can save 20% on a course. And so go check them out. Now, you also at Advancement offer a lot of free courses for people to kind of get their feet wet using advancement courses too, correct?
We do, yes. So we have a slate of micro courses is what we call them, and they're very discrete, self-paced, on-demand, modularized courses that we made free to the general public during COVID to help people transition into the learning environment that was the COVID-19 experience. And so we also, again, are standing up some toolkits. And so we're actually launching quite a few new products over this school year. So stay tuned. And we also have the ability to take some of those courses and, if you as a teacher are wanting to have an administrator, compensate you for your courses, we can help you with purchase orders. We've got a great customer service team that can help you navigate some of that kind of stuff. And then, check out our website. There's all kinds of other incentives, especially depending on what state you're in. We have different agreements in place.
I love that. So check out Advancement Courses. Go follow them on social media. Check out their website. Tell them you heard about them from Brad and Todd. And so, Brad, this conversation has been about growth, different ways we can do that, our own personal growth, working with the team. We want to leave everybody with one major takeaway. So when you think about the topic tonight and this idea of growth, what's the one thing you hope people walk away with from this conversation?
I don't know if you can tell by how many words I have, but one thing.
I need a $30 word.
Exactly. Center what students need and then figure out what everybody else needs based on that. Right. So really centering the user journey, right?
Yeah.
Which is super ed tech speak. But who are you really trying to impact? What do they really need? How do you know they need that? And then figure out what the adults in the room need based on what those young people need.
I love that. Well, Brad, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. Thank you, Advancement Courses, for making this conversation happen and for allowing everybody an opportunity to learn in their own style and their own ways. And we hope that y'all go check them out at their website or follow them on social media, and we'll see you around.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Todd.